On this video, I want to talk about ideal arm angle at release. This is my favorite feature in Shooter Tutor, and I think it's really cool. It uses physics to calculate the perfect arc to put on your shot depending on where you are on the court. I was using this feature mostly that an old overweight guy with bad knees, myself, was able to become a good shooter. So if I could do it using this, anybody can once they know how to use it. And the reason that it made me a better shooter, there were two main reasons. First of all, it made it much easier to shoot because once you have the ideal arc on it, that means that it's the minimum force required to get it into the basket, which also meant now I was never really a very good three-point shooter, and what I realized was I was just shooting the ball too straight at the basket. Once I had Shooter Tutor show me that I needed to put more arc on my shot, I became a much better three-point shooter. Now, those were the kind of the things that I was expecting out of it. What I didn't really expect was how much it would help with my consistency. So what it did is basically when you're shooting, there are so many variables that go into shooting. You know, and one of those variables is how much arc do you put on your shot. You know, if you shoot even slightly with a slightly different amount of arc, that means that everything else in your shot needs to change to adjust for that change in arc. So once I used Shooter Tutor to show me what angle to use, and I started consistently shooting at that angle, that meant there was one less variable in my shots, and my practicing paid off a lot more because you know, I was being consistent with my shot. So like the same amount of force would yield the same results because I was using the same amount of arc. So for you to use this, when you first install Shooter Tutor, or when you first do install, if you haven't yet, it asks you things like your height, your arm length, how high you jump, you know, your vertical leap, and your shooting form. That's how you hold the ball when you shoot, if it's under here or if it's up here or whatever. And it asks you that stuff for this ideal arm angle at release, because it uses all that stuff to figure out for you what the right angle is. Now, I kind of imagine that people would, if you have this, you might have a friend that you want to lend it to, or maybe if you're a coach on a team, you might have a bunch of players that you want to practice using this. So on the settings tab, I put a little button in there. So if you press that button, it's the player setup wizard button. It'll go through all those steps again. It'll ask so that every time a new player wants to use it, or someone new wants to use Shooter Tutor, if you go in and press that button, it'll go through all the steps asking you the information for whoever that person is, about whoever that person is, so that they'll be able to use it, and it'll give readings based on their attributes, not yours. So that was kind of the initial setup that you needed to do. But before you can use it, every time you turn it on, you need to recalibrate it. Every time you start Shooter Tutor, you need to recalibrate it, which means you just basically got to tell the thing that you're ready to use it, and teach it kind of what level is on the device. So let me start up Shooter Tutor here so we can go through that. First of all, what you'll notice, I'm left-handed, which means I shoot with my left hand, and that's why I grip the thing in my left hand. If you're right-handed, you want to hold Shooter Tutor in your right hand, of course. And you also want to make sure that you have the home button towards your shoulder. You don't want to have it away from your shoulder like that. So like I said, you grip this guy with your shooting hand. Make sure you're on the calibration tab. And once you're on this tab, what we'll do is we'll double tap. It's going to count down. It'll do 3 beeps, and then it'll do the camera shutter. And the camera shutter means that's when it thinks you're holding the device. That's when it's going to take the data and assume that you're holding the device level. So if we double tap, we'll hold this guy nice and level to the ground. Okay, so what you see is the screen changed, and what we're looking at is this is the angle that it's telling you the device is at. Like right now it's saying that the angle is pretty much 0. And you see there's a little target up here. What that target is telling you, since we're set, our shot spot is set to the foul line, what the target is telling you is at that angle, that's the angle you want to shoot the ball from the foul line if you want the ideal arc on your shot. So, and you hear the tones, of course, like the tone when we're holding it level, that's to help you as you're out there actually using the thing, because you really have to be careful and make sure that you're holding this along a straight line from your shoulder, because if you're holding it like this and then you go up, it's not going to give you the right reading. So I had it make this sound when it's level, so that as you're using it, because you only calibrate, you don't have to calibrate every time you use it, you just calibrate once. So when you go out there to a new spot that you're going to shoot from, the way that I do it, and I envision people doing it, is they hold it level until they hear the beep, so that they know that their arm is in a straight line, and then they slowly raise it up until they hear the sound, the locked on sound. So that's the angle that they're going to want to shoot the ball at. They want to shoot it straight up that way. That's the low angle, it's kind of the lower tone, and that's the high angle, it's kind of a higher tone. And then the locked on tone is just a nice steady locked on tone. The other thing you really need to, you can't really tilt this thing too much, or the readings are not accurate enough. To really get accurate readings, you want to hold it straight up and down. You don't want to tilt it either way. So if like you're tilting it, if you're tilting it too much and you go try to find the angle, you'll hear that wavy sound, and that means that it's tilted and it's not going to bother giving you a reading because it doesn't think it would be accurate enough. So if you hear that sound, it just means that you need to flatten it out. So that's the calibration screen. That's how you see what angle. These numbers, you can't really see them very well, but they're basically showing you that's the angle. Like that's 10 degrees, that's 20, that's 30, that's 40, that's 50 degrees. Now, all right, so once this guy's calibrated, what you want to do is you want to go over to the shot spot tab. I kind of flipped over to it quickly before. The shot spot tab is where you tell it where you are on the court, like you can zoom in and pan and all that. Like if you're going to shoot three-pointers, if you want to find the angle for three-pointers, you just tap basically at the three-point line, and you'll see like the angle now is a little lower than it was when we were shooting here. And you know, you can see if you're like, you know, right close to the basket, of course, the angle goes really high. But for the most part, you'll be using it, or I use it mostly from like the foul line here or the three-point line. Those are the two places that I most often practice my shots from. So now that we have the shot spot here, let me just describe a little bit of what we're seeing. Like this is telling you, here's kind of an interesting little thing if you're curious about like what the distance to the basket from different places on the court are. When you set your shot spot, the first label here tells you that is 8 feet from the center of the basket, that is 13 feet from the center of the basket, that's 19 feet from the center of the basket, and it also tells you, basically what this value is. See where the target is. It tells you that like from there that the angle you want to use is 49 degrees. From there it's 55 degrees. From there it's 65 degrees. And then the last little label down here is just telling you what angle it's currently at. Like right there, it's somewhere around 0. You know, it's bouncing between 0 and -1. There's like 20 degrees. So it's just showing you what the readings currently are, in case you're curious.